Today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Sesame Street catching heat for a post about homosexuality. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a rating. You can always email us as well. quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Always glad to hear from you. We're glad you're with us, getting through the news of the day each and every weekday, bright and early. With me today, CBN's Billy Hollowell, Trey Goins-Phillips. On the focus story, as I mentioned there, that Sesame Street post, man, causing quite a stir.
Yeah, Sesame Street is in trouble yet again. We'll get into the details of the latest here in a minute.
All right, and coming up on the main thing, tick season is exploding across the U.S., and experts say this could be the worst year in a decade. We'll have the full report on what you need to know coming up on the main thing. All right, want to encourage you, if you haven't considered it yet, to become a partner with CBN at cbn.com/give if you appreciate getting news from a Christian perspective, which is quite honestly something you are just not going to get really anywhere else, as we are a team here that's praying every day over our days, and the news that we're going to cover and the stories that we're going to select, all of that stuff, we put it in prayer and we put it before the Lord. And so that's the kind of people and the kind of quality journalism you're getting here. Not just people who are good at what they do, but also very, very much answer and know they answer to a higher power. So if you want to walk alongside the work we're doing here, if you appreciate news from a Christian perspective, consider partnering with CBN. And you can do that at cbn.com/give. Any amount helps. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people to put the news together and to cover all the things happening in this world. And so we're glad you're here with us. And so if you feel led to help our efforts here, go to cbn.com/give. All right, we're going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And a prominent Catholic exorcist is drawing attention for comments about UFOs and unexplained aerial phenomena. Stephen Rossetti, chief exorcist for the Archdiocese of Washington, says many reported UFO sightings could have a demonic rather than extraterrestrial explanation. Rossetti said demons often work through deception and may present themselves in ways designed to distract people from spiritual truth. He emphasized that belief in life on other planets is not necessarily at odds with Christianity, but he cautioned believers against becoming consumed by fascination with aliens, UFOs, and paranormal experiences. And nearly 20,000 people attended a two-night Festival of Hope outreach in Madrid, Spain, where evangelist Franklin Graham preached the gospel. Hundreds of attendees reportedly made professions of faith in Christ and are being connected with local churches for discipleship. One of the most compelling stories was 36-year-old Marcos Bedell, who described himself as a former atheist and said he was deeply impacted by God's pursuit of him. Nearly 900 evangelical churches from 15 denominations partnered in the effort. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. Billy, I know you've covered this topic a lot with the aliens, the UFOs. There was a big controversy over that supposed meeting that happened and what did happen and what didn't happen, and everybody was debating that. But the government did end up releasing some files, and they said there's going to be more files to come. So there's definitely something to it. What exactly that is, everyone's sort of disagreeing on. But here's another person saying kind of, well, it could be demonic activity.
Yeah. And, it was interesting because in his explanation, that priest basically said, well, look, I don't necessarily think there's a theological problem if aliens do exist. So that was interesting, right? But I think that we're dealing with the demonic here in most of these cases. And so the question has never been, are people seeing things they can't explain? We know they are. I think there is one question of what percentage of it is legitimate or has an explanation. And maybe that's 95% of it has an explanation, 99% even, but that residual, what is it? And, we just know for a fact, looking at stats and numbers on this, that a lot of these claims, as we've said on the show before, of alien encounters and UFOs, they mirror what people experience in possessions. They're very similar. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how many more faith leaders come forward with positions on either side of this, but we seem to be hearing more about the demonic. I think we've heard more about that now in the last 2 months than we've heard from faith leaders probably in my lifetime ever.
I just think that this whole story is so bizarre, the way that it continues to unfold. And look, I am 100% the skeptic on the alien stuff coming from the White House, and it's going to be this huge, massive drop that's going to be absolutely earth-shattering. They've said that about several things, and it's proven so far on other issues to be a whole bunch of absolutely nothing. I'm not saying that that will be the case with this, but it'll be interesting to see as more information does come out, if anything materializes. That being said, I think it is important as Christians to know where we fall on this kind of stuff, right? It doesn't mean we need to have every bit of minutia figured out and we need to know every detail to answer every single question. But we should know as Christians, what do we think about the supernatural? What does Scripture say about the supernatural? How do angels and demons interact with us? What are possible ways that they may be manifesting in the world today? So I think entertaining these questions and having these kinds of conversations is important. So the impetus being the White House stuff, who knows what's going to happen with all of that. But the fact that these conversations have come from it, I think that is good fruit.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something we will keep an eye on. And whenever that next batch of information comes out, we'll be taking a look through it and see if there's anything newsworthy in it to report. But stay tuned to cbnnews.com for that. All right, going to go to the focus story now. And we are in June, and you know what that means. LGBT activists try to hijack it and make it about celebrating sin. Pride all month. And so Sesame Street now is catching some heat here for their posts. So what did they post?
Yeah, June, the most insufferable month of the calendar year. The long-running children's program, PBS show, Sesame Street, I think they're in season number 56, if I remember right. They're facing scrutiny after a social media post marking Pride Month. The post featured the show's characters arranged in a rainbow-colored image, because all of the characters, of course, have different colors of fur, so they've arranged all of it to create a rainbow array. And it says, "Happy Pride Month from Sesame Street." And it went on to encourage audiences on their social media to, quote, celebrate and uplift the LGBTQIA+ members of our community. The framing of the message obviously has drawn a lot of debate and a lot of criticism, particularly from Christians who are noting that this is a program that's geared toward children ages 2 to 5. So why are you promoting sexuality in any way on your social media? Why is that even part of the conversation? So it certainly has drawn a lot of ire and disagreement on social media.
Yeah, and what has the typical kind of reactions been on both sides here?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of progressives have been celebrating this. I saw one saying in response to somebody who said, "Why would you be promoting sexual identity to a 2 to 5-year-old toddler?" And they said, "Well, toddlers are gay too. Children are gay too. So we should be teaching them to embrace themselves and embrace their desires, and to know that they're accepted from an early age." And I'm thinking, what 4-year-old is thinking about who they're sexually attracted to? And even more concerning, what adult is concerned with having those conversations with a 4-year-old? So anyway, that's just a bit of my personal opinion there. But a range of conservatives, from pastors and activists, politicians, they've criticized the message. Pastor Josh Howerton, somebody we've covered before out of Texas, he argued that it was inappropriate to communicate about sexual desire, again, in content that's aimed at children. Activist Brylan Holland, he called the post gross, saying that it amounted to strategic grooming. And then the conservative organization Turning Point USA, founded by the late Charlie Kirk, also weighed in, emphasizing that the show is intended for young children, and questioned why these kinds of conversations are even happening on the social media channels associated with a PBS Kids show.
Yeah, and in regards to your adding your opinion in on that one, it's very difficult to listen to some of these quotes and hold back on that because some of it's so insane. But what is the history with Sesame Street?
Yeah, so a lot of this goes back now several years. In 2021, it kind of reached a boiling point. The show featured a quote unquote Family Day episode where they introduced a same sex couple as part of the storyline involving one of the other characters' relatives. That episode was presented as part of the show's decision to be inclusive and to represent different sexualities, with the creators and contributors to the show describing it as reflecting diversity in families. And over time, the program has periodically incorporated pride-related messaging, as we've seen in the social media post, but also LGBT characters, which increasingly, and Billy and I actually talked about this in a video on our CBN News YouTube channel, increasingly we're seeing people on both sides of the aisles, particularly parents, who are saying, look, I'm all for, somebody being homosexual or whatever, that doesn't bother me, but I don't want this kind of messaging coming at my 4-year-old daughter. These are conversations that I want to be having with my kid. I don't want Sesame Street doing that. So while we would disagree on the biblical sexuality between secular and Christian people, it is interesting to see this broad coalition of parents who are saying, I'm kind of sick of you shoving this down our throats.
Yeah, really is. And I wonder, guys, when have we reached a tipping point here? And we were just saying before we started taping, as I scroll through social media, I still see a lot of the major sports teams are doing this. And it'll be interesting to see if they continue it the entire month or if they just do it for a day or two or something like that. Because regardless of where you fall on the issue, I mean, people are just... you're automatically going to upset a lot of people. And like you were saying, Trey, like you automatically upset half the people, but even the people who might not be devoted Christians are still seeing an issue here with this being jammed down their throats, as that one person said, to their kids. I mean, it's very disturbing, and you can't help but notice too, the uptick in stories that we're starting to see now where, when a gay couple is celebrated, there's been a couple with like 2 gay men adopting a kid, and then lo and behold, a few months later, they're arrested for abusing that child sexually. And it's just very disturbing. And so whenever there's sexual perversion like that in the first place, outside of God's design, all of us know that it's a red flag for potential issues in other areas as well. If you're already going down that road in one area, then it's likely that it's going to happen in another area. And so it's just common sense. And I don't know how much the public at large, guys, are fed up with this sort of thing. But I guess we're going to find out, and we'll see as this month goes on where we stand on that. But this latest one from Sesame Street has really got people frustrated.
Yeah, there's no place for this with kids' content. Enough. People should be tired of it. They should be disgusted by it. The fact that we have... And again, I think to what you were saying, Trey, no matter where people stand on the issue, that shouldn't be, you don't have to have a biblical understanding of sexuality to look at this and say, why are we putting adult topics in children's shows or having children's shows present them in this strange way? It is not normal, and we got to stop. Period. End of story. There's nothing really more to say about it. I think it's bizarre.
Final thoughts, Trey?
Yeah, it absolutely is bizarre, to say the least. But I agree with the point you were making, Dan, a minute ago about you can't just let one area of sexual immorality exist and think that it's not going to spread into other forms of sexual immorality. I think sin is like a weed, especially sin against one's own body. And I think that it's corrosive. There's no way to isolate and say, well, I'm going to accept this as okay in the name of being compassionate and accepting other people, and not expect it to leak into other areas of life. I mean, it's going to eventually corrupt everything within its reach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's disturbing, to say the least. And so we'll see how they end up, if they even bother responding to this at all. I mean, because it's basically full-blown activism at this point, when you're automatically going to upset at least half, if not more, of the audience out there. You're doing it as an activist to try to push an agenda. And so we'll see if these companies can continue and want to continue doing this. So I appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today. And again, if you want to see their video on that, check out our description here of this podcast. We'll have that link to that YouTube video down there. Appreciate that. And we are going to go over to the main thing now. And emergency room visits for tick bites are already surging, with Lyme disease cases on the rise as well. Health officials are warning Americans to take precautions as tick populations boom this summer. CBN's Lorie Johnson has the details on today's main thing.
About 500,000 Americans contract Lyme disease from tick bites each year. Most fully recover from the bacterial infection if it's detected early and treated with an antibiotic. About 20% of those infections, however, evade early detection, resulting in severe joint pain, vision problems, neurological issues, and hospitalization or even death.
So definitely it's a big year for ticks and a big year for tick-borne diseases.
Johns Hopkins scientists warn Americans to take precautions against Lyme and other tick-borne diseases.
I'm thinking about babesiosis, an increasing disease of a small parasite that infects red blood cells and threatens the safety of our blood supply, or the alpha-gal syndrome, an allergic reaction to eating red meat.
Also, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, anaplasmosis, and more. Experts recommend avoiding tick bites by wearing long sleeves and long pants in tall grass or wooded areas, and even tucking your pants into your socks. Consider bug spray and wearing light-colored clothes so you can easily see a tick and pluck it off before it bites.
And when you come inside from doing high-risk activities, so these are going to be things like hiking, golfing, gardening, do a thorough tick check, and then shower immediately to wash off any ticks that might have sort of caught a ride.
There's also the option of creating a tick-free border near your home, since ticks can't fly or jump.
So ticks love forest edges. So if you have a forest edge up to your yard or in your neighborhood, you can try to rim this edge with a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet of mulch or gravel, just because this will be a difficult place for ticks to crawl through.
Deer and mice often carry ticks, so getting rid of rodents and fencing out deer can help.
And you can also finally spray your lawn or your neighborhood as well. Many pest control companies will make formulations to spray for ticks, but also there's some work showing that spraying for mosquitoes might be effective against ticks as well.
Many don't realize that after a tick bites, it can remain implanted in the skin for days.
What I would suggest is that you pull out the tick, and if you can, put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in your freezer, the only way to kill a tick. And so you have it available in case you do develop symptoms.
Different types of ticks carry different diseases.
Unfortunately, many of the tick-borne illnesses start with very non-specific symptoms. We call them flu-like illnesses. So you might run a slight temperature, you feel fatigued, but there isn't really anything that allows you to differentiate one disease from the other.
One exception is Lyme disease, which produces a telltale bullseye rash. Yet that's missing in 1/3 of all cases, so doctors often struggle diagnosing tick-borne illnesses.
And the diagnostics that we currently have are really not great, and they don't work at the point of care, so they are not giving you an immediate answer. So often the doctor will treat with a broad spectrum antibiotic, so thinking it might be Lyme and hoping that if it's not, that the antibiotic will work.
An important thing to remember is by removing an infected tick within 2 days after it bites, you're likely okay. That's because it takes that long for the bacteria to travel into a human. Scientists just finished a phase 3 clinical trial for a Lyme disease vaccine with promising results. It could become available by the spring of 2027. However, it requires 3 shots plus a yearly booster.
And so it's unlikely that the broad communities, all but the most enthusiastic outdoors people, are going to pick up this and have this vaccine given to them.
So while many tick bites can often prove harmless, others can lead to serious illness, even death. That's why experts stress prevention and early detection, especially this time of year.
All right, Lorie, appreciate that report there. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We got Psalm 27:13-14. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Sometimes we have to wait and it's really hard and it can be really painful and it can be a challenge, but that's where we grow the most. And so I've tried to lean into that more as life has gone on.
Yeah, interesting too that verse in one passage says, wait for the Lord. I think, usually scripture, it repeats things that we find difficult as human beings. And I know that I have found that difficult in my life. So great reminder.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good spot to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. And if you would like to partner with what we're doing here at CBN News and CBN at large, a lot of great stuff going on, you can become a CBN partner. Just going to cbn.com/give. God bless. We'll see you back here tomorrow with more.